The first season of Last of Us adapted the original video game by Naughty Dog almost in full, capturing the dynamic between Joel and Ellie, the horror of the infected, and the emotional, character-driven story. Season 2 takes on the events of the second game, The Last of Us Part 2, and beyond, with some changes made for television. The showrunners Neil Druckmann, original game director and writer, and Craig Mazin mapped out Season 2 with an eye to bringing in deleted material from the game, not just retreading the story. Season 2 was also planned as 7 episodes versus 9 in Season 1, but emphasized to feel dense and high impact. The story picks up 5 years later in universe from the end of Season 1. These are important because they shape why the season might feel different, leaner, more pointed, and less of a meandering build-up as in some of the early episodes in Season 1. The emotional weight of the story, Joel's death early on, Ellie's devastation, and the moral grey zones exploited by both Ellie and the antagonists were one of the many things I appreciated about Season 2. The focus also on the character, Ellie's growth, her relationship with Dina, the complicated interplay with Jesse, and the community dynamic in Jackson. The two-angle storytelling as well, the show's attempt to show both sides, with Ellie's vengeful arc and Abby's parallel arc, which is lifted straight from the game, but adapted also for television. A standout, of course, is the visual and narrative fidelity. Moments like the Science Museum trip, the Jackson community scenes, and the inclusion of the faction warfare between the WLF, the Washington Liberation Front, and the Seraphites, known as the Scars, give this world extra depth. In many respects, this season retains the first season's strengths, high production values, superb acting, especially here from Bella Ramsey as Ellie and Isabela Merced as Dina, and the willingness to explore dark and messy emotional territory. The show also brings the ability to dig into the backstory, the freedom of the TV medium versus the game, which allows the showrunners to linger longer on the relationship dynamics, to explore side characters. That to me is absolutely one of the season's greatest successes. But like anything, no season is perfect, and I agree with some of the critiques. For example, few infected set pieces than perhaps expected, and there's also the broader criticisms worth examining. A lot of people criticize the pace structure and the compressed universe. Now, with only 7 episodes to cover a huge and emotionally dense game narrative, I truly also felt the pace was somewhat uneven, and I felt maybe an episode 8 could have been justified and would have sufficed, as I felt in particular episode 7 a little bit rushed, missing some major beats, and also some strange narrative choices, like the Seraphites now capturing Ellie, almost in a brief interlude, only to let her go so she can resume her mission. I just found this sort of odd, and albeit a legitimate narrative choice, kind of one that divides. As in Season 1, the infected sometimes seem somewhat sidelined. Of course, early on in the season you see the massive hordes attacking Abby, and then of course the town of Jackson. But as the season goes on, the show more concentrates now on the conflict between the main characters and of course the WLF and the Seraphites. Now, this isn't inherently bad. TV can shift emphasis towards relationships, but it does change the tone from the survival horror feel to a more revenge thriller human drama. Also, for example, leaving out the addition here of the Shambler, which is an infected who of course evolves in the wet environments, can spew corrosive acid gas, I found somewhat disappointing. But I was, however, glad to see the addition now of the cordyceps being carried through the air in spores, something that I felt the first season lacked. Now, of course, there was initial skepticism surrounding the castings of Kaitlyn Dever as Abby, for example, as she doesn't really have the physical resemblance, of course, of Abby from the game, who in the game is very muscular and has built up her physique and is very much larger than life, where Kaitlyn Dever, to all intents and purposes, quite petite. But she certainly doesn't lack any of the intensity from Abby in the game. And albeit that we see her only briefly in the season, I do believe that she will make the role her own. And of course, when you read that the fan backlash was so intense due to her casting that Dever reportedly required extra security during filming for her safety, well, then you know people have gone a bit too far. Obviously, one of the most contentious aspects from Game 2 was the idea of having to now play as Abby, seeing the world through her eyes, after seeing her primarily as the killer of Joel. This was of course something I initially didn't like, but later on grew to appreciate it and see from a different perspective and realize just how phenomenal the storytelling is in this game. Now, one thing that I was disappointed to read about was the audience's reaction. While critics absolutely loved Season 2, audience scores somehow plummeted. One report noted that the audience's scores dropped to 37% on Rotten Tomatoes due to review bombing, coordinated with mass negative reviews for reasons beyond the actual quality, but some reflects genuine dissatisfaction from portions of the fan base, with some noting to the Joel death moment, major deviations, and the shift in focus away from the video game arcs, not to mention some anti-LGBTQ feelings, particularly in the relationship arc between Dina and Ellie. With one specific moment getting heavy criticism, notably Ellie saying the line "I'm going to be a dad," when Dina's pregnancy is revealed. This became a meme and a flashpoint in the debate about the tone of the show trying to be too woke. However, if you've actually played the game, you'd know this is very much part of the story, and I frankly welcomed this and embraced it as part of Ellie's character arc. Now, even with my minor critiques, Season 2 still remains a very strong piece of television and a meaningful adaptation in the broader sense. The Last of Us as a game really means so much to me, so of course I approach it from a different angle. It's very personal to me in many ways, but I can't say that Last of Us Season 2 is a bad season. It's absolutely brilliant. For me, overall, it reinforces the video game adaptation and that this type of genre can be taken seriously and delve into the rich characters, the thematic depth, and the cinematic ambition. I mean, for me, this is Oscar-worthy storytelling. The story examines revenge, trauma, guilt, community rebuilding, father-daughter surrogacy, identity. These are themes that many TV shows would shy away from. And by shifting the focus to Ellie's journey and Abby's counter-journey, the show invites moral reflection. Who are we when we pushed? When does vengeance become us? The game did that so well, and the show amplifies it further. I have played both games twice, and this kind of adaptation offers additional layers, new characters, new arcs, and ways to revisit the world. And rather than taking away from the folklore, adds to it. And yes, once again, the acting is absolutely superb. Bella Ramsey's portrayal of Ellie and the supporting cast, particularly here Isabela Merced and young Mazin here as Jesse, bring nuance and emotional weight that even non-gamers could engage with. And yes, once again, Pedro Pascal absolutely blows me away with his performance here as Joel. Unfortunately, he's not seen in the season as much, but it really is about quality, not quantity. One thing though I have to say is production design is absolutely outstanding. The wonderful score once again by Gustavo Santaella, as well as the way they capture both the beauty and decay of Seattle, is just frankly outstanding, eerie and beautiful. With Season 2 ending on a cliffhanger, the stakes naturally will be higher in Season 3, as we will see the story now shift to Abby's side of the story, as of course happens in the game. Now, Season 2 of The Last of Us is bold, emotionally heavy, beautifully crafted, and yes, slightly uneven in places. It leans more into character drama and moral ambiguity than constant infected horror, and that shift may surprise or frustrate some fans. But for someone like me who loves story and is open to adaptation changes, it delivers in spades. The show is nuanced, focused on relationships, character arcs and world depth, and brought forth by phenomenal performances here, particularly from Bella Ramsey, Pedro Pascal, Isabela Merced and young Mazin. Rather than detracting from the game, as I said earlier, I believe the season adds to it, adds to the folklore. And yes, maybe a little bit rushed, and maybe skipping some key points in the game. At the end of the day, this is an adaptation of the game, not a retelling. The Last of Us Season 2 gets a 9.5 out of 10. Because overall the season does everything I hoped it would and brings to life what is truly an undeniable, breathtaking and phenomenal story. So what did you think of The Last of Us Season 2? Please let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dive reviews.